The status of science in this country leaves much to be desired. We don't have enough science teachers, we don't have adequate facilities, but at the same time, the interest among students as far as science subjects are concerned is kind of low. So by having YST in place, you see, it is actually serving as a catalyst to try and motivate these students who have lost interest. But now you can see the interest is actually now coming up. I see that we can see light at the end of the tunnel because of the existence of YST in Tanzania.
The idea of transferring the young scientist idea to Tanzania came about through my work with the Combat Diseases of Poverty Consortium at NUIM Maynooth. There I worked as education officer, and part of my job was to engage students with projects for the Young Scientist exhibition in Ireland. We were focusing on projects around science for development, so we were trying to engage students in Ireland to look at issues around poverty, sustainability, gender equality, and to get them to try to research projects that were focused on these issues. In 2009, in January 2009, I met Professor Michael Kelly, and I explained to him the type of work I was engaged with in Ireland, and he looked at me and said, you know, why don't we try this idea in Africa, where it was more pertinent and more necessary.
So Joseph Crowley in 2009, he came over to Tanzania. He talked to me, we met for the first time, and then we discussed this, and they said he was having another meeting somewhere in Uganda, and then I think he went also to Kenya, or trying to assess where the young scientist competition would have been started for the first time in East Africa. I was looking at this competition as having a great potential, and I wouldn't let it go like that. So I said, no. I convinced Joe and said, look, let's start it in Tanzania, because I think in Tanzania, of all the East African countries, we like this as much as possible. When he came back, he said, look, now we have decided that we are going to have young scientist competition here in Tanzania.
From my initial meeting with Kamagisha, where he really took on board the issues around science for development and saw the great potential. And then the good luck that he would come to Ireland a few months later and see the Young Scientist Project in action in Ireland.
It was during that time where I had the opportunity to go into those schools, and I had the opportunity to see kids in Ireland, young kids in Ireland, the type of research that they were doing for the young scientist competition in Ireland. I was seeing they were young kids and they were doing fantastic research, a type of research that you would expect to be done by a master's students here in Tanzania, but those kids, they were doing that.
It became clearer and clearer as the days went on that by introducing Young Scientist Tanzania, that this was going to be actually like a catalyst for the cultivation of a much needed science and technology culture in Tanzania.
The level of sciences here in Tanzania was horrendous, I would say. And you look at even the pass rate in science subjects in the Form 4 exams and the Form 6 exams, we said, no, this has to happen here.
Once we had government buy-in, once we had the confidence that we were going to get sponsorship for the idea, and once we had buy-in from the students and teachers that we had met, I then went and met Tony Scott in Ireland and said, look, we're thinking of transferring the idea of young scientists to Tanzania, and he immediately thought it was a great idea and offered us the use of the fact file and the use of the judging procedures, and also we decided then that we would model our website, something like the one in Ireland.
This exhibition is like a platform where they come to share their innovations, their scientific research and all that, share among themselves as students, but also share with the members of the public and the government to try to show the type of innovation that they have done, and the types of skills that they have in terms of handling various issues in their communities.
We have every year working for us about a month before the exhibition, volunteers from universities and from organizations who come and work with us for 4 to 5 weeks, making sure that all the logistics around transport, accommodation, and facilitating and cooperating with the event management team, that everything works.
We have a team of mentors who normally go to the regions, go to the schools and meet the students and the teachers, and then sit down together, try to go through those projects that they want to do. Then we advise them on how the best methodology, the best scientific methodology of doing those type of research, those type of projects. And then in the end, annually, we organize a Young Scientist exhibition, which is normally either around August or September, where we have quite a number of young people from secondary schools from all over Tanzania.
100 schools, 300 students and teachers showing some of the best science projects, equal if not better to what you could see anywhere else, even in Ireland.
Whether it be Arusha, Zanzibar, Mtwara, Lindi, all of the 22 regions that we work on, we have a regional coordinator who arranges or facilitates meetings for us. So if we need to hold a workshop, we liaise with our regional coordinator who will do all of the logistics.
So it starts early in the year when you're traveling to the regions right across Tanzania, north, south, east and west, the most rural regions, and where you're trying to meet fellow enthusiastic science teachers. We organise a local workshop. We invite as many of the local science teachers as we can to come to our workshop. And then that's our day one. From then on, we work with these teachers face to face through workshops, on the phone, through email, supporting them through their project idea and its development, right through to giving them the explanation of the scientific method. How do they approach the question that they want to answer? And we're with them every step of the way, developing their projects, supporting their students, giving them all of the resources we can and the support that we can. And what you're seeing today is that end result.
They're very bright kids in Tanzania, and this has given them a very good platform, the youths. Like people now are getting scholarships, so people will really look up to it now. They'll really work hard for it, and I'm sure it's going to grow bigger and bigger with time.
They have the opportunity to display their achievements, to share their understanding with others, to compete for prizes. But I don't think that's actually the most important thing. I think it's for them to be appreciated by their peers and by the judges who come from the broad spread of Tanzanian society, from academia, from industry, from commerce, who are all well qualified in their own right.
Another very important aspect of Young Scientist Tanzania is where we are now offering scholarships to students who participate in the exhibition. For example, this year, 2014, we offered 9 scholarships to students for their studies in university. And what we are finding is that people are really engaging with this idea of science for development, the idea that despite lack of resources, despite lack of equipment and laboratories, that students are really engaging with this, and it's giving students the necessary confidence and belief that they can and be vehicles for change in their country.
Young Scientist Tanzania gives the young people the opportunity to be able to research issues that even are not taught in the classroom, to be able to come up with kind of innovations that are not taught in their classrooms, but those type of research, the type of technologies that in one way or another relate to their lives.
So what we try to encourage the teachers to do is actually look around them, take a step outside the classroom, look around their environment. There are so many simple tools and devices that you can use just to create that flame of interest among their students. Once we have their interest, then we can expose them to all this other technology that's out there. Starting very simply like their mobile phone. Their mobile phone can be used to do so many experiments. And then we show them even a more advanced technology, these handheld devices, data loggers, which are, I suppose, almost becoming the norm in Europe. And we're showing them how they can use these data loggers to jump ahead, to leapfrog what the current kind of methodologies are. So it's all about exposing the teachers and the students to what they're going to be coming across in the future. You know, this is the technology they cannot avoid. They cannot get through life without using it and becoming comfortable with it. And that's part of what we do, exposing them to all of this opportunity and all of this technology.
The kids, most of the kids did not like science because in most cases they were taught theoretically, so it's more about the theory, and they are not given the opportunity to try to relate what they learn in the class and the type of life that they live in their communities. So for us, Young Scientists Tanzania, we are trying to build that connection.
It's not about studying it in the classroom only, it's about applying it and exposing it to the society. The science deals with solving problems, yeah. So as young scientists, we can solve many problems that in our country. Yeah, we are young scientists.
It's about the love for science, improving the world. Yeah, so when you be a young scientist, you develop and love science because you're actually doing it practically and you're meeting with other people with of the same kind. Yeah, but when you're just learning class, it's only writing and all and cramming. Sometimes some students just get the low self-esteem and don't love science anymore.
I would say this competition is giving a clear message to the young people, but that they are the ones who come up with solutions to their own problems. It's not imported solutions from outside. It's giving them the sense that they have that responsibility of coming up with solutions, whether to do with a problem to do with the agriculture, to do with the water, to do with the health, to do with the environment. So they are taking that initiative.
Most of the projects that are submitted for the Young Scientists Tanzania are projects that are informed by the challenges in their environment. So most of the projects are being born out of their experience of poverty, their experience of climate change, their experience of agricultural problems. So I definitely think Young Scientists Tanzania shows a true science for development approach to development.
In the Young Scientist Ireland, I think it's quite interesting that they have this Science for Development prize. And in fact, in a way, a lot of the projects that I'm going to go out now and have a look around the exhibition, a lot of those projects are actually typical Science for Development projects because the kids here are of course trying to apply science to their own immediate problems, and so there's a lot as well to learn between, you know, what comes in for that Science for Development prize in Ireland and the kind of projects then that kids come up with here to deal with. They don't call them development problems, they just call them problems. So that's what they're looking at. How do I solve this problem or that problem that surrounds me? That's something that will be really useful for my own community.
Science or innovation, there shouldn't be any limitation. You can teach a kid something, yes, but that kid should also have the opportunity to exercise what he or she thinks is the type of innovation that you would like to achieve. So this is changing the attitude of the young people that science can be done in a better way, in a practical way, and it can be problem solving.
Science is important for me because it helped me to give knowledge about myself, about the world, about different things that are conducted in the world.
Yeah, we're now talking about science, then this means nature. You're talking about nature, so that we are using science in solving various problems into the society.
Because our country is all about economics and agriculture, and even the agriculture, there is not enough technology to make us develop. Like, because I learned in geography that in Netherlands they produce milk and provide to the whole world, but in our country there are a lot of grasses, there are a lot of water, there are a lot of cows, but we can still not provide to our people. So it seems there is a problem in science, in production. That's why I think that we need a lot of scientists in our country.
You know, for this year, YST have managed to cover 100 schools You know, in Tanzania, mainland and Zanzibar, they have enabled it to cover 22 regions in Tanzania. And this is very nice because it gives opportunity to people from remote areas, you know, to participate in this kind of programs. So actually, what YST is doing is creating a way for kids to be creative. So you just support them in a few things, but the rest they can do it for themselves.
I often think that I do some pretty hard-nosed science in hard-nosed, you know, environments physically, you know, and institutionally and all these kind of things. And then you see some of the things that these kids have done with no resources. A lot of them, you know, coming from families that don't have many resources. And they're so happy and proud of themselves, and they've done great stuff. And it really, it's put a lot of energy back into me. This is fun. This is fun, and it's how we all got into science. It's just because we love it. It's got nothing to do with multi-million-dollar grants or donors or spelling corrections on theses. It's all about the raw enthusiasm that drives the whole process. And I think we're all obliged to make sure that this kind of thing continues and that the career progression for some of these young ladies and gentlemen is there. That's how I spent most of my time in East Africa, and I just think some of these guys, we've got to make sure from today that the runway is laid out, and if the runway is long enough, they'll take off at the end.
I have got 100% confidence that if we take this young scientist initiative to its maximum, will really improve our science teaching and science learning, and will really produce scientists. If we have stayed for maybe 50 years, we didn't produce good scientists, I think this is the way.
Another very interesting aspect of Young Scientist Tanzania is that we are building up great relationships among the science teachers in the regions. For example, in Tanga, the teachers who are involved at Young Scientist Tanzania, they meet on a regular basis, almost a science teachers club. This is also developing in other regions like Arusha and Kilimanjaro. Young Scientists in Ireland has been running for over 51 years. When it was started back in the 60s in Ireland, Ireland was a very poor country. Likewise, it was quite obvious that if you take the idea to a developing country in East Africa, for example Tanzania, that this would also have the same potential. I'm convinced that we will be looking back in 20 years' time and thinking that the Young Scientist Tanzania project will also play an incredible part in building capacity among young kids, but also building capacity for science teachers and therefore building the foundations for a developed young country like Tanzania.
The height of success this year was beyond expectation, I must say. We did expect it to go really high, but not as high as it's gone. So definitely there is expectation from us in terms of growth, in terms of expansion, and I think we have all the capacity.
We wouldn't have believed back in 2011 when we had 4 schools presenting projects that 3 years later it would be live on national TV at prime time from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock on national television.
In terms of government support, the Ministry of Science and Technology actually has been so helpful for making sure that YST actually grows, and in actual fact is growing.
I can tell you right now, the government is already convinced that this is the model. If they wanted to improve science and technology in this country, they have to invest in the young people, and they have to make sure that kids are doing sort of scientific research and technological innovation for young scientists competition.
Tanzania has a population close to 50 million and one of the fastest growing young populations in Africa. One way that we will need in the future is to see how are we going to engage not just 100 schools from 22 regions in Tanzania, but we need to engage every school in Tanzania. And what we would hope or envisage in the future is that each region, for example, Arusha region might hold their own young scientist and technology exhibition and select the top 12 or 20 projects from there, and then they would come with all of the other regions and have a very high standard competition in Dar es Salaam.
And then after that, we wanted to give it a sort of East African face, try to expand it to countries like Uganda, countries like Kenya, to have a similar competition and maybe eventually have an East African competition for young scientists, sort of that. So, we see that as being achievable within a few years, because who would have expected that we would have achieved all this within the span of about 3 years? What we have achieved is incredible, and I can say things are changing so quickly. The kids are so positive, the teachers are so positive about this, and it has the potential of expanding and becoming East African competition.
Because the basic idea behind the Young Scientists is to empower young people and to give them the confidence and the opportunity to believe that they can play a vital part in the development of their country.